Hello, everyone, and welcome back to My Dead Dragon. I'm your host, Katherine Larange, and I am thrilled to be here today with Danielle Klooster. And Danielle is a seasoned international business success coach, trainer, and strategist. She's also an author, public speaker, and management consultant. And Danielle's no-nonsense approach helps entrepreneurs, businesses, and nonprofits develop a winning edge through impactful strategy, critical and creative thinking, and meaningful action. Clients who engage on point with Danielle are entrepreneurs, small business owners, and nonprofits who need support through coaching, training, and strategy development to build rock solid foundational strategies, processes, and systems that catapult them forward to achieving their biggest goals. So, Danielle, I'm so grateful to you for joining me today. Thank you for being here.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. Of course, I love your podcast and love the people that you interview and the stories and the concepts that, of course, you're talking about. So I'm happy to be here and be part of the conversation.
Oh, yay. That just made my heart all happy. So can you start us out and share your story? How
Sure.
did you kind of realize, like, hey, I have the opportunity to be in charge and in choice of my own life here and be the main character? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I was the third of four children, but I was the last birth child, and then we adopted my brother. So there's sort of two babies in my family, me and my brother, right? And so that was interesting, that birth order stuff that you kind of have. And my father was a minister, and he would, so born and raised in Alberta, Canada, and he would plant churches, which would mean we'd move to a community where there wasn't a church, and he would take a job, right? Because you got to have an income. And then they would hold services on the weekend. And just as the congregation grew or whatever, then they would, and he's also a carpenter. So he would literally build the church.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a very unusual upbringing.
Yes, yeah. So so my mom, she taught piano, but she was raising her children, and dad was working full time and then ministry on the weekends. So really engaged with that. But he was there, with us as much as he could be. He always made us a little skating rink in the backyard in winter, and so sort of this beaver cleaver kind of idyllic life, right?
Mm.
And then when I was 6, um, and I'm really still not sure how all this happened, but suddenly out of nowhere, we moved onto a farm with my grandparents, and my mom went to university to become a teacher.
Mm.
And my dad went farming with my grandfather for 4 years, right? So here we were, like, and my grandparents had two foster children who had a lot of issues.
Mm.
And so suddenly I'm thrust into this really uncomfortable living situation. My mother is like gone, right? She's gone
Mm.
from early in the morning until late at night, and she's got homework, and there's all of this sort of family dynamic. And I just kind of felt like, how come it seems like everybody else gets what's going on and I don't? Like, I don't get
Oh.
it. I
Oh.
have no idea how life works. And that sort of carried with me, where I kind of watched people and was trying to figure out, well, do they know what's going on? Do they have life
Mm.
figured out? Because I don't. You know, and
Yeah.
and so like, the thread through all of that is that I was a really creative person my whole life. Like, I was very, had a strong musical ear. And I remember I wanted to write, like, before I could read or write. I
Mm.
mean, I saw my mother writing a letter, and I wanted to do it so badly, but I couldn't. So
Mm.
I dictated letters to her, and she
Yeah.
would write them for
Oh.
me. So I always knew I wanted to write, I wanted to speak, and I wanted to sing. And I was just this creative person. And that drive, that thread sort of never left me. But there was a whole bunch of mixed stuff with, no, the way that you're showing up is clearly not right or good, and you need to
Mm.
be this way. And
Mm.
being this sort of creative, woo, head in the clouds person just
Yeah.
was not seen as what one needs to be, right? And so I kind of got this message that I shouldn't be that way,
Mm.
but I couldn't figure out what to be. And so I
Right.
would watch others and try to be like that, and that would work for a bit, but then not really. And then I would try to be like
Mm.
that and not really. And but there was this strong drive all the way through to just sing and write and speak. That was just
Yeah.
it just never left me, and I would always come back to that.
Mm.
And through really tumultuous teenage years, of course, I'm in a really religious environment, and I'm trying to figure out who I am, and what is right for me, and yet what is right, quote unquote, as well, right?
Mm.
And a bunch of trauma happened, and really negative experiences. And when I got into the later years of high school, I was dating a fellow who he had some real emotional issues, and I had some
Mm.
struggles. Um, and I felt like I was supposed to. That was the right thing to do, would be to marry him, right? And
Uh,
like I kind of, because I'm still trying to figure out how to
yeah.
do it right.
Yeah.
And so that marriage was a real struggle from day one. It was just really
Mm.
hard, and we were together for 15 years, and then I just basically fell to pieces.
Mm.
Like I just couldn't do it anymore, and I didn't really even care if it made me wrong.
Mm.
Like it was like, fine, I'll be wrong. I will burn in hell if that's what it
Mhm.
takes, but I can't do this anymore. And so
Mm.
through that period of going through the separation and the divorce, and me just in this really low place of like hardly functional even,
Mhm.
I came to a point where I had an encounter, and I use the word God. I believe we're all connected to divine, and that,
Mhm.
and that, so use the word that works, like universe, divine, spirit,
Mhm.
whatever word works. But I use the word God, and I had this really sort of stop you short, smack you in the face encounter with God, where I kind of felt like he was saying to me, like, I don't think like you do. The way that you
Mm.
see yourself is
Mm.
not how I see you.
Mm.
And you are determined to think that you're wicked and lousy and awful and a failure and disgusting and just all of these terrible things, but I don't see you that way. And
Mm.
whenever you are going to choose your lies over my truth, you're you're putting your word above my word, and
Mm.
you're creating that reality because that's what you have committed to believe. And so I kind of felt like, am I sort of like calling God a liar? If
Mm.
I'm choosing my lies and I'm
Mhm.
refusing what he says, when he says,
Yeah.
I made you, you're perfect, you're lovely, you're beautiful,
Mm.
you're amazing, you're awesome, and here's all the wonderful things that I put in you, and that's the real true you. So I embarked on, because I felt like I couldn't, like, I either had to choose, okay, you're a liar and my reality is the truth,
Yeah, yeah. And
or I had
so
to,
your
yeah,
reality based on the
the
messaging
pain and
that you grew
mhm,
up with, right? Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
The messaging I grew up with, the trauma that I suffered, the conclusions
Mm.
I came to about
Yeah.
myself, about others,
Yeah.
about God,
Yeah.
those limiting beliefs that I chose, but I didn't know I was choosing, but all of that programming and all of that, right? All bundled together into this big condemnation bundle of shame that I was really living in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I made the choice to say, okay, even though what God says about me doesn't feel true, and what I think of myself feels true, I must choose what He says. And I began like a 2-year intensive process of rejecting those limiting, punishing, painful thoughts and beliefs, and saying, even though that feels true, I can't accept that. I reject that, and I choose this instead. And my life began to literally change. I mean, my results changed so much. I began to work in jobs that, like, opportunities came to me, and I began to just have these, started to build a beautiful life and to rise and to care, to be able to step into issues I care about and have a voice and feel confident in sharing my voice. And I mean, the walk of shame. So that was 22 years ago. The walk out of shame. I mean, yes, I say it was 2 intensive years, and it was the hardest work I've ever done, but it really has never stopped.
Yeah.
That walk out of shame is just a continuous process. And every once in a while, I'll catch a little vestige of shame thinking, or a root of something where I'm like, why am I thinking that? Is that the truth? What is the truth in this? And I'm able, now I have the tools to sort of walk through it and walk out of it. And I've done the work around creating a personal being statement. And that is what I live by every day. So I know who I am. It's my northern star that guides me every day. And I'm just stepping into, more and more fullness of everything that the universe has to bring me. And not that there aren't challenges, of course, and not that I don't stumble along the way. But that it's so wonderful to have the tools, right?
Yeah.
To be able to navigate. Yeah.
Yeah. And to have that connection and that knowing that there actually is a bigger truth.
Yes.
There's a bigger truth. There's there's, when we look at our life, there's evidence that can support a certain way
That's
of
it.
being and thinking, but there's
Yeah.
actually a bigger truth about our capacity, our worthiness, our capability. Yeah.
Yeah. What the brain does is, first we formulate a belief, which is a decision, right? And then the brain looks for evidence to support that decision.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the good news in there is that I can choose a new belief, and then my brain will begin to look for evidence to support that decision. And it's really that Wayne Dyer quote, when the things you look, when you change, how does it go?
When you
When you
change the things
change
you
the
look
things you
at,
look at, the
yeah,
things you look at change, right? So
yeah.
you're not looking at those things anymore. And so now if I'm having a result that I don't want, I can take it back to, well, what action brought that result? From that action, what was I feeling that had
Yeah.
me engage in that action? From that
Yeah.
feeling, I can walk back to, what was I thinking? And
Yes.
from the thinking, I can walk back to, what do I believe? And then I can
Yeah.
assess, does that limit me, punish me, cause me pain, or does that serve me and move me forward? And if it doesn't serve me and move me forward, it's a lie. And that's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's a
But,
tough one.
and to make the decision that that's a lie, like, I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's can be a very challenging place to get to,
Yeah.
where, and you shared with your story, so growing up, this divinely creative child,
Mm-hmm.
right? And expressing and wanting to be
Mm-hmm.
singing and dancing and speaking
Yes.
and all of this. And in the context of an environment where there was this messaging, and I don't know if it was direct or indirect, that that's not okay, like that's not
Right.
how you need to show up. And
Mm-hmm.
so looking like, well, how do I show up? And
Right.
it kind of seems like everybody else has it figured out because they're obviously like doing what they're supposed to, but I
Yeah.
don't know what I'm supposed to.
Right.
And so buying into that, right? And again, like as
Mm-hmm.
children, we make the best decision that we can, and we,
Right.
right, well,
Totally.
yeah, at any point in our life we're making the best decision that we can. And yet there was that spark within you,
That would never die.
never die. So
Mm-mm.
so did that spark get quiet? Did it speak to you when you were kind of in your first marriage? Was
Mm-hmm.
it like, did it get quiet? Did it, was it always there? If it did get quiet, how did you
Right.
rediscover it again?
Mm-hmm. So I tried to fit it into the construct that I was in.
Mm,
I always thought that my life's work would be performing and writing,
mm,
and I intended to do that. But when I got married, that was not going to be okay.
mm,
And so the construct was within the construct of the church. I could do things, right? So I
mm,
could sing at church, and I could be part of things at church in terms of music. And I was very privileged. I was put on staff in a couple of churches and leading music and writing musicals and directing choirs and doing all of those wonderful things. Um, and like literally writing,
mm.
plays and productions and
Yeah.
whatever. And then I had an opportunity to actually do some writing back in the 90s in Alberta. There was this um, government department called the Office for the Prevention of Family Violence.
Mm,
And contracted me to write a show that a puppet show that children would perform
mm,
to help them learn how to do anger management. So
mm,
I ended up doing the voice recordings and the writing for that. And then these kids took this puppet show around to various schools to teach children, appropriate anger management and stuff like that. And that really sparked something in me, that there was something outside of the
mm,
church walls where
mm,
I could practice my craft. And I began to
mm.
do, some writing here and there, dabbling in magazines and whatnot. But it really wasn't until, after coming out of that marriage and doing the work, that the opportunities to really step into being me and
Yeah.
and fully. And I didn't know that. I mean, the work I'm doing now with business training and coaching and strategy develop, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know you
Yeah.
could do that, right? But how cool is it that, every day I get to stand up in front of people and talk, and I get to
Mm,
work with them and write things, that as long as I feel like I'm being very creative, and as
mhm,
long as and I'm having an impact. And those were the two really big check marks for me that I wanted. Like, I remember being like 6 and listening to somebody give a really impassioned talk, and I just thinking, I want to do that. I could feel the emotion and the impact they were having. And I just thought, I need to do that. I
mm.
need to do that. And it was
Yeah.
just like a deep burning desire.
Yeah.
So to be able to, speak on stages and deliver meaningful things that really
Mm.
change things for people, I didn't know it was going to be in this framework.
Yeah.
But man, I feel alive every day. And
Yeah.
my partner that I'm with, he is incredibly gifted musically, and he has when I met him like 2 years ago and walked into his sound studio, and he has like every piece of sound equipment known to mankind, like a fully functioning, band full thing. I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So now, we have a duo and we perform together. And so I'm back performing musically in a way that feels really authentic and legitimate. I'm writing, I'm speaking, I am living out of who I have been since
Yeah.
before I was born.
I
Yeah.
love that. And I love that that spark was there and
Mm-hmm.
that you expressed it in the way that you could within the context and environment,
Yeah.
right? And I
I couldn't
think,
not though.
yeah,
I
you couldn't
couldn't
not.
not.
Yeah. And so within that context, did you notice where you were hitting the edges, right? So there's a difference between that full feeling of expansion, like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, this is my thing and I can really, really
Mm-hmm.
relax into it, express it, experience it, get
Mm-hmm.
creative, get playful, get fun with it. Did you notice when you were at the edge of that? So you can do it within this context,
Right.
right? And the reason I ask is that I think for so many of us, we have that spark, and sometimes it gets really, really quiet and it tries to express itself, but
Mm-hmm.
we limit ourselves, right? Or we're
Mm-hmm.
limited by the context. And
Mm-hmm.
so, the more that we can notice when we're brushing up against the edge, where we
Right.
kind of feel ourselves like, ooh, it's not safe to,
Mm-hmm.
maybe want to think bigger, dream bigger,
Right.
then that, and
Mm-hmm.
that creates that barrier, that boundary for us. And there's a
Right.
difference there between, kind of noticing the edge and then drawing ourselves back into
Yeah.
constriction and
Mm-hmm.
being able to really get playful with that
Yeah.
edge.
Yeah. I mean, there were lots of incidences where I hit the walls of the culture of
Mm,
so within Christian culture, what is a woman, and of course I was like in the 70s, right, and
yeah.
80s, and the culture that I was in, I was in smaller, my when I was in my first marriage, we always lived in smaller communities, so really
Mm,
very conservative cultures where it was like, but this is how a woman is supposed to be,
mm,
and you're not supposed to be, up there
mm,
in the spotlight, like
mm,
like and it's okay for you to do those things as long as you're also in the kitchen, as long as you're also doing these other things, and you've got to. So I was really trying to do it all. I
yeah.
was trying to be a domestic goddess and
Mm,
whiz, and trying to be, I couldn't not do those things,
mm-hmm,
but to make sure that um, I mean, I did offend people. Let's just face it. I offended
yeah.
people just by being a woman and being, doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
But I felt shame in that. I couldn't not
Yeah.
do it, but I just felt shamed, and I felt like,
Yeah.
why don't I just give up and just go like work in the kitchen, or just go,
Mm,
do these other things that
yeah.
a good woman is supposed to do, right?
Yeah.
And that was something that I just felt like I was trying so hard,
Mm,
and it was just not good enough, right?
mm,
So that's where the edges were for me. Also, there were opportunities to go further with music, even within the Christian context, and because I was married with children and whatever, that was just not going to be.
mm,
You just couldn't do that.
yeah.
And so, yeah, those were the edges. And yeah, once you sort of step out of that and you just get to show up and
Mm,
create and be,
mm-hmm,
um, it's almost like taking a plant that's outgrown a plant pot, putting it in the larger pot,
mm.
and then trying to stuff it back into it. Just can't be
Right.
done.
Yeah.
You
It knows
can't.
there's a bigger pot.
Yeah, it's like, I'm a die. I'm a
Yeah.
die. If you put me back in this little pot, I'm a die. And it
Yeah.
just can't be done, right? And I mean, that's
Mm,
like, I've been, I started my company in 2012 and have been full time since 2014. I don't, I honestly don't think I could go back to work for like as an employee. Like I think I'm unemployable, right?
I
Like
am highly
I
unemployable.
just have to be doing what feels right for me to do
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
given moment, right?
yeah.
And the wonderful part is that with the blow up of the first marriage, I kind of the gift, one of the gifts in it was that I got to examine what I believe about God and what I believe about
Mm,
spirituality and what I believe. And I could examine everything and go, okay, why do I believe that?
mm,
And maybe I don't anymore. Maybe I don't want to believe that anymore. And guess what? I don't have to,
yeah,
And so
yeah.
one of the most wonderful things is to have this connection to divine, to feel like, I'm co-creating with
Mm,
spirit every day, and that we're just intrinsically entwined in creating this beautiful life together,
mm,
and that my glory is his glory and vice versa, and together we're just doing
yeah,
this wonderful thing, and
yeah.
that it doesn't have edges. I still want to put edges and fences around things in my
Mm,
humanity, because we want to take things that are infinite and
yeah,
pull them down into a finite package so we can manage them and control them, right?
yeah.
But when you just surrender to the fact that there are no edges, there are no walls, there are no fences, and kick your feet up and go with the flow and let it become what it's to become.
So
There's no limits.
how do you get to that point where you can actually relax into the flow and
Mm-hmm.
lean into, what would I love to do today? What feels
Mm-hmm.
life-giving to me in this
Mm-hmm.
moment?
Mm-hmm.
And really lean in and trust that when maybe you're
Mm-hmm.
worried about, at the level of fact, I got to pay my bills, I got to make my
Right.
mortgage, I got to make sure my children stay
Mm-hmm.
alive, right? Keep
Mm-hmm.
myself alive.
Right.
How do you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, well, and it's funny because when you grow up in a religious environment, there is that sort of disconnect between here's the real world and here's the spiritual world, and
Mm,
they're tenuously connected, but
mm,
they're two sort of different spheres. And to learn that that's not true, that everything's energy, everything is spirit, and that's the true reality. For me, um, a dedicated morning practice. So I get up at 5 every morning,
mm,
and there's journaling, and there's reading and study, there's meditation and prayer. There's listening to thought leaders that I respect,
mm,
and then maybe a little more journaling. But
mm,
quite honestly, if I didn't have that time,
mm,
um, as my as my personal, it is personal development, but
mm,
it's thought development, it's spiritual connection. It's if I didn't have that, it's so easy. And I notice the days when I don't do it, I notice that I'm much more sort of plugged into the limitations of the real world, and I
uh,
feel less connected and less guided and less able to have that divine perspective. I lose that. So
mm,
I have to have that,
mhm,
in order to build that spiritual connection and stay in that place. And
mm.
through the day, opportunities always arise. The printer breaks down. I have a real problem with printers. Right? And the opportunity arises to get into that limiting way of thinking about
Mm,
why do things always go wrong and blah, 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 right? But you have this northern star of that divine connection. And like I mentioned earlier, in writing a personal being statement, where I really dug into, and it wasn't about purpose. I believe that's separate. Being and purpose are separate. So the being
mm,
statement is like, who actually am I in my
mm,
core, in my foundation? What are the attributes
mm,
that I love about myself? And that even if I am not that yet, who do I want to be?
Mm.
Like, how do I want to be?
Ah.
Who do I want to be? And who am I? And
Mm.
in writing my personal being statement, which isn't, Moses didn't bring it down from the mountains. It's subject to change, right?
Yeah, it evolves
And
as we
it
evolve.
evolves. It
Yeah.
evolves as we evolve. Yes, absolutely. But, I have it written on sticky notes and it's on my makeup mirror. So every morning
Mm.
as I'm getting ready, I'm thinking, what do I have on today? Okay, so based on what I have on today, how do I want to feel? And what
Yeah.
do I want to create? And
Yeah.
who am I going to be today?
Mm.
And I reflect on that being statement, and it really gives me those guideposts so that in the moment when things go sideways, I can ask myself, what does wisdom look like in this moment?
Mm.
What does joy look like in this moment?
Mm.
What does grace look like in this moment? What does leadership look like? I can go back to those attributes in that
Yeah.
statement and I can go, I don't want to be a
Ah,
leader right
yeah,
now.
I want to be angry.
Yeah, I'd really like to be
I have my
petty.
feelings.
That's right. How about some self-pity? Can I just have a
just
moment?
just give me a second here.
Yeah, but I can go back to that,
Yeah.
and that's my guidepost to say,
Mm,
but this is who you are.
yeah. The
This is
truth.
who you want to be.
Yeah.
So make the choice to show. It's always better when I choose
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Always better.
It's
Mm-hmm.
such a powerful place to be able to come to your life from a place of responsiveness and
Yeah.
choice, right? Knowing that
Mm-hmm.
throughout the day, throughout the week, the year, there is going to be stuff that we would not prefer shows
Right.
up.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to actually choose how we respond to
Yes.
that it's a game changer. It's a game
Oh yeah,
changer. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. When we understand life is not happening to us, it's
Mm-hmm.
happening for us,
It sure
right?
is. Yeah.
Yeah. And that pronoia thing, like the
Yes.
universe is conspiring to shower
Yes.
me with blessings. When you
Yes.
live from that place and you
Yeah.
notice that, it's like, what? Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
beautiful.
And
Yeah.
knowing that we can consciously choose to shift that whole process, right? The
Hmm.
thinking, feeling, action, result
Right.
with the beliefs and also what we put attention on. So if I'm
Hmm.
spending my day looking for the bits that are going wrong, I'm growing that part of my
Right.
experience. But if I go through my day cherry picking the ways that the universe supported me
Yes.
today or how I showed up like a freaking rock star,
Right.
that part grows.
Hmm. Yeah. And so, I mean, I've already shared with you that uh, um, that for me, keeping the being statement keeps me intentional and
Mm,
reminds me of what I need to know. But in order to keep myself in that high vibe place of gratitude, right?
mm.
That I've developed a practice where every time I take a sip of water, I offer a gratitude. Woohoo!
We're sipping
And
our water.
we're sipping. You might have heard it. So the so in that moment when I sip the water, I can go, look at how beautiful the leaves are out on the trees. Thank you for the
Mm,
beauty of fall. Just
yeah,
there's something in that moment that I can
yeah,
notice that life is beautiful. The world is
yeah,
beautiful. So many amazing things are happening to me. I'm sitting in my comfy chair in my office, and through the power of technology, I'm having this amazing conversation with this amazing woman that we just sort of, through an introduction, got to know each other, and it's wonderful. And like, how amazing and how beautiful is
yeah.
life, right? Life is beautiful.
And how amazing it feels to live your life that way, right?
Hmm.
To really consciously slow down and be present for the beauty. And
Absolutely.
just sinking into it. Sinking
Hmm.
into it.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, and to see, so I wrote a meditation about a secret forest, and in this forest there that this woman was walking through the forest, And just as she was walking and she began to appreciate the beauty of the forest, suddenly she noticed that there were gems hanging off of all the trees, and there
Mm,
were gems on the ground. And the more gems she noticed, the more gems
yeah.
came to
Yeah.
light, and before she knew it, it was all gems and all glorious and all beautiful,
Oh,
and she could have as many as she wanted, because she didn't
yeah.
have to take only as many could fit into her hands. She could literally pull those gems inside of her, and they became
Mm,
part of her. And so I love to do that meditation and to just think about how the abundance and beauty that life
yeah.
has to offer. And the more I notice, the more comes into
Yeah.
my experience.
The better it
Hmm.
gets, the better it
Yeah,
gets, right? The better,
absolutely.
yeah. And we don't attract what we want. We attract who we
Hmm.
are, and
Hmm.
where we place our focus and our attention.
Yeah.
The universe reads as our intention and brings us more of that. And so I love that meditation, and I
Hmm.
love the idea too of looking at the personal gems that you have within yourself.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
maybe you can only find one right now,
Right.
but cast your loving gaze, your intention, your attention, your focus on that, and it will multiply.
Absolutely. Absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Danielle, looking back to kind of that whole journey, that you've been through up to this point, if you could give that younger you, or you at an earlier age, if you could give her a message, if you could let her know something, what would it be?
You do know.
Mm,
You do know.
mm,
It was when I didn't listen to my intuition,
mm,
when I allowed the voices of others to crowd in and to tell me that I was doing it wrong or that I didn't know. And that was always when I went off track. When I
mm.
follow my intuition and I tap into spirit, that's
Yeah,
always right for me. And
yeah,
I did know. I just didn't think I did. I believed I
yeah,
didn't. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. And
Mm,
really, that's the message that everybody needs to tell themselves. You do know.
yeah,
You
you
do
do
know.
know. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Danielle. And any last words you'd want to share for my listeners? And I will include all of your links in the show notes. And I believe that you do have
Hmm.
a download that people can access as
I
well.
do.
Yeah.
It's a practical business tool. It's a one-page business plan canvas that really gets you clear and focused on what you want to create, who you want to
Mm,
create it for, all the elements that you need. So like the work I do is really practical, but it's all rooted in this. And I
yeah.
have a 6-step process that I walk clients through that starts with that being statement piece,
Mm,
and it goes into purpose, and then we go to mindset, habits, actions, results. And so
mm,
it follows this whole process, and that's what I walk clients through. So there's lots of really amazing business building strategy and processes and systems that are all part of that. But we're whole beings, right? Where
yeah.
we aren't separate. Well, this is business and this is personal and
Yeah.
this is spiritual, and they're all in these little different compartments. No, it's all together. And so that's the work that I do. So yeah, absolutely go and download that tool at my website on the Get It Here page. So the website is onpointwithdanielle.ca. And then you click on the Get It Here page, and you can download that one-page business plan canvas. And yeah, anybody who's interested in working on some strategy for your business or not for profit, I'd be happy to have a conversation as well. Thank you, Catherine, for this
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah.
So
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you. And you also host a clubhouse room, I
I
believe, on
do.
Tuesdays at
Hmm.
3 Mountain Standard Time.
Yes. So the club that I run on Clubhouse is called Rock Your Startup. And each Tuesday at 3, we talk about different issues that impact businesses, everything from finding your ideal client to, getting through sales fear and overcoming that to effective marketing, and value proposition, like all of the stuff that you need to kind of know to really rock your business. So we have a conversation. I'm joined by some amazing people in that room. I think Clubhouse is absolutely amazing, and it's wonderful to just go in and have access to so much free learning.
Yeah.
So definitely follow me on Clubhouse and come in Tuesday at 3 o'clock Mountain Time and join the conversation.
Awesome. Awesome. And so, any last words, any message that you would want to share with my listeners? And you did share,
Mm-hmm.
but any,
Mm-hmm.
anything else that's kind of needing to be said before
Yeah,
we bring
I
it in
think
for?
I've pretty much said it all. I
Yeah.
do. I do think that if that, if that touched anybody with I've been confused about
Mm,
who I am and who I'm supposed to be and feeling like I'm doing it wrong or like I just can't figure things out. And then I heard, you do know. If that
yeah.
really resonated with you, the work that you do, Katherine, is really about helping people discover all of that.
Mm,
So I just want to thank you for the important work you're doing. And
mm.
I really hope that your listeners are not just listening, but participating in your programs, because it's
Oh.
very important.
Aw, thank you, Danielle. Part of my daily practice, of course, my husband and I have a gratitude practice at night, and then we have a proud of. So that's
Yeah.
acknowledging the part of us in human form that's taking action to serve our dreams, to be in alignment with our highest self. We're building our conscious luck, so we also focus on how we've been lucky during the day, and then my kind of the one that's different for me than him is I also focus on how the universe supported me today. And
Mm-hmm.
so what you just said is going to be in my nightly practice tonight. So
Yay.
thank you.
Awesome. You are most welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
having me.
to everyone who is listening, and also to the messages that you send me. Know that I am so grateful and honored when you reach out and let me know how the podcast has impacted you. And that when you do, that also actually goes on to my nightly gratitude list. So thank you for reaching out. Thank you for connecting. And as always, would love it if you can support the podcast by subscribing, leaving a review, and letting me know what you would love to hear more of. And I will catch you on the next episode.